Hey everybody, what is up? It is your host Drew of the DrewXperience. Normally the show is about Canadian politics and also geopolitics with Iran advocacy in Canada as well because I'm half Iranian. But today I wanted to completely change it up because I like to have fun with my show. It's my show, my rules. And when you get a legendary Aeon-like guest coming on that says, "We'll do it finally," you got to say yes and you got to make time. So my guest today is an esteemed professor. Yes, he's an actual professor, so I have to address him as doctor or prof, just to make sure. He is such a genius with what he does. He turned Japanese role-playing games into a university subject. He's got a great streaming channel. He's got a great social media page, and I'm thrilled and honored to be joined by Doc Wade, or as he's known as, Professor Noctis. Welcome to the show, Professor.
Hey, what's up, Drew? I'm so excited to be here. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
It really is. Like, I love the energy you have. I've watched your videos. I've seen your posts, and you put so much like love into your hobby of JRPGs. And I think we really need to have more of that in today's day and age of social media or just what's going on in the world to like have something positive. So it's a real big honor to have you on and have you share your passion for Japanese role-playing games because like you, that's my passion. These games are special to my heart. And I'm a JRPG enthusiast, but you're a professor, so that's a different level.
Well, the honor's all mine. I love talking to people about games and relating it to real life stuff. So
Mhm.
this is a joy for me. So thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So, obviously I have to ask because I like to always get to know like how the guest was before they became who they were. So, Professor, how did you get introduced to video games and then specifically stumbling upon Japanese role-playing games?
Great question. So I was in second grade and I was given a Super Nintendo Entertainment System for my birthday that year. And it was great. This was back in 1991, 92, I guess, 91, I guess. And it was amazing. Obviously, I played Mario and all that stuff. But every Friday, my dad would take me and my little brother to Blockbuster Video. And we would go and get to rent a game for the weekend. And I remember renting Final Fantasy 2 or Final Fantasy 4 for our
Mhm.
Japanese friends back then, but I rented it and I sucked at it, man. Like I was really bad, but because I didn't really have like the strongest reading comprehension skills that you would really need to enjoy that game. And so we rented it, but my dad kind of played it with me a little bit and a few weeks later, he came home with our own copy. And so Final Fantasy 2/4 was my first JRPG, and I remember playing through it, falling in love with the characters. Cecil, or a lot of people you call him Cecil, I guess, but it's how I learned to read it, right? So Cecil, his story for me, this story of going from a Dark Knight to a Paladin just was so compelling. And it really resonated with me, even as a kid, about who I wanted to be in the world. I want to be a person that follows light instead of darkness. I want to do
Mhm.
good. And when I have those feelings of regret, like Cecil does early on, I want to be able to overcome those things like he did. I also have just sweet memories of that game, sitting in my dad's lap, him teaching me how to read and sound out tough words and all that kind of stuff. And so that was my entry point into JRPGs. And I mean, it's a pretty good one to fall in love with.
I agree. I love everything you said there, especially the fact about Cecil. Hey, I'm up in Canada, so we have our ways of saying about a boot. Bad
I
joke
get
there.
it. I'm Alabama, so I've got my own twang.
Nice. But with Cecil or Cecil, as you said, so I really love what you said there because that's a character that really, I always say, like, everyone always asks, who's your favorite JRPG protagonist in a franchise? A lot have Cloud, a lot have Titus, Squall. If we're looking at other franchises, like let's say in Golden Sun, some love Isaac, some love Felix in the Lost Age. But for me, it always goes back to Cecil. Like, I believe he is like, you can really find also a bit religious meanings around him, I if I when I was reading some of your research, I mean, you're Christian, and I'm Jewish, and I do believe in those religions of the Old Testament. There's so many similarities with Cecil's character of how he goes from like this about a regretful dark knight to an enlightened and redeemed paladin. I still think in my opinion the Mount Ordeals scene is like master cinema.
Top tier. Absolutely top tier in the entire franchise. One of the best. In fact, I have that scene. I don't know if you can see it in the darkness. That scene was painted. I got it commissioned by an artist
Really?
online, and it hangs in my office here. So I love that scene.
There's nothing colder than that line where he goes, "This is my battle to atone for my sins." It's such a cold line, and
So
I
good.
I felt that too because it's like someone like I've also struggled in my real life with obstacles and challenges, and it's like for me it's like when I got my brown belt in karate and Kyokushin style. To me that kind of felt like okay, like I'm now like in that paladin sphere of like brown and black belt, and you become more enlightened because it's like when he becomes a paladin, his thought process changes, his psychology changes. He doesn't have any more regret. He kind of has more enlightenment, acknowledgement, and understanding, and then he becomes that leader where he says like to a very impulsive and impressionable edge, like you can't change the past, but you can change the future,
Ooh,
basically.
yeah. That's exactly it. And I think that theme resonates maybe more and more in today's world and stuff.
Hmm.
So those early years of learning that message have really given me a framework to overcome obstacles in my own life. And that's what I love about the power of games. I think that
Hmm.
the games, I call them digital mythologies, right? Like
Yes.
they are things that, stories that capture the human spirit and teach us deep lessons. They're like parables, they're metaphors for our lives. And I'm a big proponent of using these kind of stories to build resilience and grit in players.
Hmm. When it comes to Final Fantasy, I mean, look, you said you had number two, aka four, for our Japanese friends, because that's the original one. Then there comes number. I always feel like there's like this debate with like between Final Fantasy six. There's like the Final Fantasy 1 to 6 crowd, and then there's the 7 to 10 crowd.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's like so much. Like, listen, I got to be honest. I've never played 7 or 8 or 9, by the way, and I know I should. It's just that when you tell someone that like in the Final Fantasy crowd, I've never played 7, it's as if they shame you in a way. Not all, but they're like, what? And I do believe it's like, hey, guys, Japanese role playing games are subjective. But I like the 10 crowd. I feel the 10 crowd is kind of like this like mellow, like, okay, man, like, yeah, welcome to the show. And
Yeah.
it's like it just feels 10 is more of like that perfect entry point for a modern game.
Ten's a great entry point, and I just replayed it both last year on
Hmm.
stream and then this year personally. 10 is a great entry point. I actually went on a pilgrimage of my own in the month of May. I
Hmm.
walked the Camino de Santiago in Spain, and
Hmm.
I always, whenever I do anything in life, I try to have a companion book and a companion game. Always.
Hmm.
And so I read a book on pilgrimages, but I played Final Fantasy X while I was on the pilgrimage at night. And it reframed the way that I thought about that game. And it really raised it, in my opinion. It's always been an all timer for me. But the way that that game introduces characters,
Hmm.
builds stakes, tells a story, subverts that story, and builds in these meanings and themes of what do you do when you can't change fate? What do you do when the world you wanted doesn't turn out the way that you dreamed and imagined? And I
Hmm.
feel like that game encapsulates, maybe better than anything else, any other game in this franchise, what it means to be a Final Fantasy game. So I adore that game.
And it came out. I always maintain. I think 2001 was an amazing year for video games because you had the Game Boy Advance,
Yeah.
Xbox, GameCube, PlayStation 2 was finally gaining its footing. You had FF10 that came out, Golden Sun that came out. That's a cult kit now. So I think FF10 came out at the right time, basically. And I really think when you think of other Final Fantasies, there really hasn't been another one like it after. I believe one of the creators of Final Fantasy said that yeah, FF10 is like the pinnacle of what a Final Fantasy game is, and it was a bit of a hot take, but when I read into it more, I agree because if you think of it, Professor, FF10, everyone knows it. They know that iconic they see that iconic photo of Titus with the sword in the water, the beach environment, and it's like I remember where I was when I first played FF10. It was at like a video game shop where you could rent the game for like an hour and play it on their like
Wow.
server. And I'll never forget Orin's entrance. Like I'm an Orin fan. I want to make that very clear. I love
Yeah.
Orin. I like his like anti-hero, like because I love anti-heroes. Like Cecil goes from like a villain to anti-hero and then
Hmm.
hero. And then you have Orin who's just like this perennial anti-hero, but and then when you understand why he's so quiet, I mean, I haven't played much of FF10, but I know, like some have said, you have to really understand Auron's psychology to see why he is the way he is. Like, where he comes off very abrasive and quiet, but there's good meaning behind it. Like, he's not he's not a bully as some would make him out to be.
No, I think that his archetype is very similar to kind of that older brother, older guide that gives
Hmm.
you a hard time, but it's because he knows what you're capable of. You see this
Hmm.
a little bit in other games in the franchise, like Final Fantasy 15. You've got a very gruff guy named Gladiolus, who is Noctis's one of his closest friends, and Gladio comes off incredibly harsh,
Hmm.
but there's reasons for that, and it really is rooted in what they believe for the primary protagonist. So you see that with Auron and Titus incredibly, and Titus, Auron is such a great foil for Titus because I call Titus a golden retriever, right? I mean, he
Yes.
is just he's playing in the water for crying out loud. He loves to chase blitz balls. The whole game, he's just like this golden retriever, beach loving surfer dude, and Auron shakes that out of him over the course of the game. And I think that some of the best stories have that character development, and usually a character is the catalyst that's going to bring the protagonist into that development. It's masterfully done.
Very, very true. I love how Orange just enters the game like a Dark Knight
I
Batman.
love it.
I would say, I don't know if you're a cinephile like me that loves movies, but I feel Orin is like that Christopher Nolan Batman. Like that's where I feel.
He kind of is. I see it. Yeah, I mean, I think that he definitely has that aura about him.
Mhm.
But I love that. Yeah.
And I love too, like how the one thing I read it like once you find out because the one thing I wanted to add, as I said, I'm without giving away spoilers because I'm still very early in my replay through finally because I've had my phase with Final Fantasy, but then I go to say other RPGs like Golden Sun,
Mm,
Persona, but I want to get into Final Fantasy, like, and I love Dragon Quest, but I feel Dragon Quest, it's a very cookie cutter like RPG franchise. It's still amazing. I have nothing wrong with it,
it
but
is.
I feel Final Fantasy is like where you really see like the good story, like the meat and potatoes of good character growth. But Oren, to take it back to Oren, one of my close friends who loves FF10, like you, by the way, he said, Oren and you are very alike because, because I've lost both my parents before the age of 30. And then when you look at more Oren's layers, he's gone through immense tragedy. Like, this is a guy that understands loss, tragedy, mourning, and that's where, like my friend said, once you get deep into the story, you're going to really appreciate Oren much more.
I agree with that completely. That's really well said, and I think that it's those characters that have a little bit that they don't have it all together that most
Mhm.
resonate with us. I think that's what makes a great JRPG, to be perfectly honest. It's great stuff.
Very true. So, what led you to becoming a professor? Like, I mean, you could have chosen any other field. Like, well, when I say professor, you could have chosen any other subject matter. Biology, history,
Yeah.
art history, humanities, electrical engineering, etc. But what led you to choose to go this uncharted path of saying, let's try making JRPGs a school subject?
So I fell backwards into this. I never wanted to be a professor,
Oh,
which is
really?
really, yeah, it really wasn't in the cards for me. I didn't think. So I
Hmm.
was actually I had received 2 degrees in religion,
Hmm.
so trying to be a theologian more than anything.
Okay.
I wanted to do that. I wanted to work in religious work, and I'm still very active in those sort of things. So I have concurrent career paths, I guess.
Hmm.
But during my doctoral work, I am doing research really on leadership and education and how
Hmm.
to get across difficult concepts to people. How do you contextualize dense topics for the layperson, right? The
Hmm.
person that doesn't really know anything about it. And I stumbled into kind of this framework because, as fate or destiny, as JRPGs would say, would have it, Final Fantasy 15 was released during my doctoral work while I was trying to come up with a dissertation
Hmm.
topic. And as I'm playing Final Fantasy 15, I noticed that there are a lot of similarities between this game and a lot of ancient Near Eastern, but specifically Jewish kingship narratives. right?
Hmm.
And so the story of like Saul and David and many of the other 38 some odd kings that are in the Bible, right? And so I'm
Hmm.
trying to find, as I'm playing the game, I'm just like, I know these stories. So I literally had a Bible and a controller in my hand, and I'm playing through and I'm like reading, and I'm like, there's some really interesting comparisons here. I mean, instead of David protecting sheep, it's Noctis protecting chocobos. I get that, but like it's really interesting stories about kingship. And so I, as part of my dissertation research, pulled together a group of students and got IRB, or like official research board approval, and did a little 4-week study with them to see if they could learn Jewish and ancient Near Eastern kingship narratives through Final Fantasy 15. And so
Amazing.
I tested their interest level in the
Hmm.
primary material, their
Hmm.
retention of it, and what it meant in their life behaviorally. Like, was there a life change or a behavioral or mindset change at the end of this experience? And the answer was yes. The
Hmm.
University of Alabama graciously asked me, do I have any classes that I might want to pitch? I had been teaching as kind of like this part-time adjunct for a little bit. So they knew me, they had a relationship with me, but they asked me to do a little bit more. And so I pitched this weird idea about using a video game in the classroom, and they said, we love it. And so I did it, and that's kind of the long and short of it. I started using video games in the classroom because the research showed that there was a retention and an elevated interest level because of using those things.
That is fantastic. And I smiled there because you could see my little smiling, because you know what it reminds me of? The way you teach, and it sounds like, so when I'm up in Canada, I'm in Quebec. So we have what's called CEGEP. CEGEP is kind of like a mix of, you could say community college, but we like to say it's a mix between high school and college, because we don't have grade 12. In Quebec, we have primary school, then grade 7 to 11. And then it's not the best system, because to put that immense pressure on a 17-year-old to make a big decision, I do believe a grade 12 is necessary so the brain can develop more to see if they want to go the path of college or trade school or just go into the workforce. But anyways, I had a professor in CEGEP, a history professor named Michael, and he was one of my favorite professors, because what you said there, to get the interest level. So what he would do is to gauge the students' motivation and interest on the exams. He would give the essay question in advance to say, okay, this is the big one, and I have office hours. If you come and show me your answer, what you have, I will tell you if it's in the 60s, the 70s, or the 80s and above. And it's to help you motivate, get you to study and whatnot. And that got the students' interest, like myself. So I would always take, the minute the test is going to be announced in the semester, I would get my draft ready, take it to him to show my interest and what it is. He'd say, okay, well, Drew, he goes, this is where you are right now. You're in the early 80s. But if you want to get it to the middle 80s,
Yeah.
here's where like you could add this. And that gets your interest going. And I think that's a fantastic way to motivate students with a video game, because then it gets them to come to class. It gets them to give better answers, and it gets them to really go off on their own to establish good study habits.
Well, it really does. For me, I hate just sitting in a classroom
Mhm.
listening to somebody lecture, right? So I try not to run my
Mhm.
classrooms or my presentations that way, because I think that connection is really important. That's why a Zoom and the pandemic period was really a challenge, because we missed that kind of friction with one another,
Mhm.
and we can grow that way. And so part of what I try to do is take every class like a journey. And
Mhm.
with a video game, there's a start point and an end point, and we're able to go on this shared journey together. In
Mhm.
some of my classes, I ask the students to go home and play for homework, which is a pretty cool homework assignment.
That's
Yeah,
that's a good
right.
professor right there.
And then in other classes, we actually bring a PlayStation or a Nintendo into the classroom, and we play collaboratively together, passing
Mhm.
around the controller. I do that with Final Fantasy 16 as well. But what I found is, as we are playing these games together, either privately or in the classroom, the brain is processing these memories as first person memories rather
Mhm.
than third person information. It
Mhm.
moves from being an objective fact to subjective memory and experience and emotion. So I'll never forget in my Final Fantasy 15 class, it used to be a freshman experience class,
Mhm.
which is really interesting. How to help freshmen college students become adults. How to be a person is what I called it. And there were kind of 4 segments of this class. One was on the trials of a king. And so we're looking at Noctis's early trials and how they're preparing him for later. But I asked the students to reflect on what are the trials that you face in your life? How are you overcoming those things? For freshmen, it's everything from like I have roommate difficulties in my dorm room, or I'm lost in life, whatever it is. The second kind of unit that we go through are the relationships. And have you played Final Fantasy 15 by any chance?
Me?
Yeah.
I have it. So I have the royal version. So here's the thing. So I got the royal version.
Yeah.
I have not, but I got the game guide with it too, because I don't want to be going on the web, getting distracted. When I play a game like Final Fantasy 15, I want to be immersed in it. Like I want to be like the world is closed off. That's my do not disturb period.
That's kind of me as well. And so when you play it, one of the things that 15 does really, really well is it couches the party members' relationships, maybe better than any of the games in the franchise, because these 4 guys are a band of brothers. And what I tried to do in my classroom was say, there's these 3 guys, Gladio, Ignis, and Prompto. I was like, who is your Gladio? Who is your Ignis? Who is your Prompto? And those would become assignments where they would have to write about their real life reflections of these relationships. And if they didn't have one like that, well, what would be gained by having that? What would be lost if you never got that person? Gladio is a protector type, Ignis is an advisor type, and Prompto is a best friend type. And so those archetypes, bringing the game into your own life, as well as comparing it to, say, King David's archetypes of generals that he had, people like Uriah, who were his protectors to some degree. Or number 2, his Jonathan, a Prompto type, or an advisor, which can be any number of people, particularly like a Nathan or even his wife at one point in his story. But trying to make all of these sort of things to talk about the human experience instead of just something that happened thousands of years ago or in a fictional game. How does it relate to everyday life? That level of relevance is what builds in that interest and motivation, attitudinal interest component. And that's what we really try to do in class.
That's fantastic. And I love, because like, as I said, I wanted to play FF15 at the time, but then, I had other interests and all, but then I came back to JRPGs where I came across pages like yours, David Vinch, Gaming Productions. I really have to give a shout out to all the YouTube pages in the JRPG sphere, because it's very small. I wouldn't say it's very small, but and also David Cast JRPG, who I've had on my show. Great channels with all the work you guys do, because I really think, a lot of people, they look at video games, they look at the Grand Theft Autos, Call of Duties, and Fortnite. There's nothing wrong with those genres. But once you come across JRPGs, it opens your mind. And I love what you said there about the brotherhood of FF15. That's why I'm looking forward to playing it the most, because I could see, like, for example, I do karate, and whenever I have to go away, like to Japan because I do the media work for the organization I'm with, so they have me do the photography, they interview the fighters, but my one close friend who competes, I'm like his guy. So like when we go on that journey, the preparation for the tournament, getting ready for the fight, and then the tournament itself, it's like, it really is like a JRPG journey where it's like, now when I play that FF15, I'm going to look at the characters. I'm going to be like, hey, this is who they remind me of. So I'm very excited for it. But I mean, if we relate to characters, as I said, I like to say I'm like Cecil, but I have edge components to me, because I do have that impression that I do have a bit of that, immature, impulsive side sometimes. And, lost both his parents in front of him, like, and whatnot. So I can relate to that. I love Kane. To be honest, I know a lot of people hate Kane, but I don't know, man. Kane is just, from what I understand, those who played FF4 in the after years, they've said you're going to appreciate Kane in the sequel. Like, Kane finally does redeem himself like Cecil.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's some good stuff in there, so definitely try it out.
I will. I got so much to play. Like right now, I'm playing Golden Sun 1 right now. Then I'm playing FF10 on the Switch, and then I'm probably after today, I'm going to probably start FF15 because like of what you said. So I got a lot, and I also love the game Metal Gear Solid 2, and not just JRPGs, but the focus is on JRPGs. So, so the philosophy you had, study for someone that studies theology, religion, and then to bring in the game consoles as a way to get the students to get motivated to study and find their way in life, in a way, it's like, I don't want to compare it, but I do have to. I think this is a much more appropriate but a much more easier way to get young men especially to find their way in life. Because we have people like, say, Dr. Jordan Peterson, with the 12 rules, which great for some, but I think the video game one is much better because it gets that person to say, hey, I can relate to that. What would they do? Oh, I don't feel like I want to do this. What would Titus or Noctis do today? Stuff like that. So I could see what you're doing there psychologically. That's a very ingenious move.
Well, one of the things that I am concerned about, if we're talking about needs in the world, and I know that that's something that you care about a lot, there's a lot of stuff online that can send, especially young men, down some trails that may not be the best for them. And
No.
what I'm trying to do, at least with my channel, with my classes, with content in general, is to help offer a counterpoint to some of those things. What are the highest ideals of the person that you want to be? What are the things that you see depicted in games that inspire you and elevate your experience to something beyond what you can currently see? So how do characters deal with pain and loss and suffering, and how do they not burn the entire world down? I think that Final Fantasy VII is a wonderful example of this because you have a number of characters that are facing incredibly difficult circumstances. Some of those characters burn down entire cities, like Sephiroth, for example. Others try to find ways of not hating the world, but they're working through that aspect of acceptance and now what. My brother, he's a high school football coach, and he every now and then has these inspirational quips, but he always says, I try to adopt this mindset of so what, now what? Like this thing happened, so what, now what? He said, because you can't control what happened in the last play, you can only control what happens in the next play. And I'm like, that is so JRPG coded because it's like the worst thing happened, what's the next thing? And how do we control what happens next?
Exactly.
If we can do that in this gaming sphere, which is so often maligned for toxicity, negativity, hypercriticism, and reclusive behavior, that's oftentimes anti a lot of different people groups, especially women. It's a hard place to be for a lot of women. I really feel like we can impact culture and society. Gamers are, I believe, the most overlooked and least impacted people group by a lot of social movements. Therefore, we're trying to bring some of those things into the classroom and certainly to the online sphere.
That's fantastic. And I love what you said there. So what, now what? I'm going to use another Final Fantasy, for example. Remember when Cecil, Yang, Edward, Rydia are going to try to take on Golbez, and then Leviathan hits.
Yeah.
And it's like Cecil's like, so, and then it's like Cecil's in his so what, now what? And he ends up back in Mysidia. And that's when he atones for his sins of killing the Mysidians in the beginning of the game. And even the Elder, like, who could have been like, hey, get the out of here. And he says, nope. He goes, if you want to repent, you have to go to Mount Ordeals if you want to really see where you're gonna so that's your so what, now what. But you're not gonna, there's been many who don't come back, and that's like the so what, now what of life, basically. Like, okay, so what, you had, what, you're in debt, now what are you going to do to fix that? So you lost so you have you failed a test. What are you going to do now? Is it you're going to let this be your be all end all and you're going to quit and just have that? Or you're going to say, okay, I'm going to improve, see the professor, how to study. So I do believe there's a lot of so what, now what in JRPGs. I want to ask you, there's specific scenes in JRPGs, like, we spoke about Final Fantasy IV. If there's any other JRPG game, it could be another Final Fantasy. What scene stands out to you? And then I'll give you my scene. It could be any JRPG.
Man, that's a tough one to kind of narrow down because there's so many powerful moments. I will say, man, some of them are kind of spoilery, and I don't want to say that, but I will say that the ending of Final Fantasy 15, I'm not going to go into it, but I will simply say the ending of Final Fantasy 15 resonated so deeply with me. I think it's the best ending in the entire series. And I catch a lot of flack for that, but nobody, I'm Professor Noctis, right? You've got to understand, like, I love Final Fantasy 15 unashamedly. But the ending of that game, every time I see it, it appeals to my greatest ideals of what the world around me can be when darkness is vanquished, when worse things aren't last things anymore, and what we can do when we don't seek to undo. A lot of times we look back at the past and we seek to undo everything that's ever happened to us. But I have found the older that I get that there is a level of acceptance of reality that leads to freedom and
Hmm.
liberation. And I think that Final Fantasy 15 does that in a really, for some controversial way, but in a way that says sometimes the way forward is to accept what is and to do the next thing. And what do you do in that moment? And so for me, that scene in particular absolutely wrenches me. Very similar, as a side caveat, just because it is the most iconic scene in maybe any JRPG, it would be the most dramatic scene in Final Fantasy VII as well. It's
Hmm.
another character who is looking ahead and saying, I am going to face fate without any trepidation because I know what
Hmm.
needs to be done and I'm going to do it. And so I'm trying to be as non-spoilery as possible, but I think everybody knows Final Fantasy VII's
I've never played
basic beat.
FF7, so I got a lot. I got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah.
When it comes to for me, have you ever played the Golden Sun series, number
I
one in the
really
Lost Edge?
haven't. I have not.
Okay, okay. So there's a scene in number two. I mean, it's like those will know, but like it's not too sport. It's not like a defining moment, but it is one where like you see where like it really resonates with like certain characters, which we'll get into with like which characters resonate with. So I'll give kind of that here because it's a mix of that. So there's a character you get called Pierce, who's a water adept. So it's based on the elements like earth, fire, water, and wind. So they go to this land called Lemuria, which you'll learn about a bit of it in number one, but then in number two you go to that land. And when Pierce comes home, he finds that his house is like not well kept, his uncle's home. So he goes like, where's my mom? Like, she's normally keeps the house clean. And his uncle goes like, oh, like goes, when a certain like event happens, it was too much for her weak heart. So she gave her heart in order for you to be alive and safe. And then he's like, well, where is she? And he goes, she's like, her grave is she's in the grave where like she'll just be like with the moments of time now. And then when you
Hmm.
read the mind of the uncle with a certain character, he says, I wish I had his courage because he's only gonna know a life of being alone. He's lost his father at a young age, being
Hmm.
timid and shy. That made him more of a man. But then, being off on his own and now seeing his mother gone, he's gonna have to really learn to be on his own. And then, like, you see Pierce like really mature from like this. He goes from I wouldn't say impulsive, but he's brash. Like he does have a brash side to him. But then he becomes more of that like silent leader that does what needs to be done. And that's something that I try to really emulate from, where it's
Yeah.
not the loud ones, it's the ones that like still have a smile on their face and still like plow through despite the obstacles given their way.
Yeah. I mean, again, even though I've never played that game,
Mhm.
I know that type. And there's
Mhm.
something, if we pull back from the specifics of each JRPG, what we're finding is that there are commonalities across the human experience.
Mhm.
And there's something so human about these stories. And that's why they resonate with us. That's why the
Mhm.
greatest stories in history resonate with us. Right now, Christopher Nolan's take on the Odyssey is breaking records, doing all kinds of cool things. Why? Because the Odyssey, which is something that I've taught in previous semesters as well, it's a human story. And
Mhm.
the story of Telemachus and the search
Mhm.
for a father and what happened and all of those kinds of things. It's not just about the monsters and the journey,
Mhm.
but it's about our shared journey as humanity. That's what JRPGs do for us. That's what the best narrative-based games do for us.
Very true. I love how you said like it really gets you drawn in. And as someone who is, as I said, we were talking off the record before. Like I said, I'm neurodivergent or autistic. So many things now. I'm old school. I was diagnosed when I was 7. By the way, I do not use Chat GPT or TikTok as many do now. It's like I think I have. I actually got my diagnosis. Bad joke. But anyways, I feel JRPGs are such a great gaming genre for special needs, whether they're ADHD, whether
Yeah.
they're autistic, because it really gets them. Like, for example, I struggled with reading comprehension. I could read words, but if you ask me, Professor, well, do you know what you were reading there? I'd be like, I would read the words and you say, okay, but that's the word. What is the comprehension of there? Like,
Mm.
what did you understand? So I feel like JRPGs, because it's so visual and it can different remember it really depends on the person's level of understanding because every person is different, but I feel JRPGs, even something as Pokemon, can help because it gets them to like get out, socialize. In that regard, Final Fantasy character development, as we were talking about with like religion and relating it. What is your thoughts on that? Like as JRPGs as a way to become an inclusive gaming genre for that demographic, because I'm a big proponent of special needs advocacy in Canada with politically, and I feel like we need to do more to have like those on the spectrum feel like they can succeed. And I do believe JRPGs are a tool that can help people like myself and many others to realize their skill set and potential to thrive in life.
That is, first of all, spot on. It reminds me of a colleague of mine. His name is Chris de Sambaggio Moore. He completed his doctoral dissertation, and this is the title of it. I had to look it up. Video Game Psychodynamics, a grounded theory of video game discussion in counseling. And his research is really focused on using games like World of Warcraft and Final Fantasy, the online MMORPG, to explore identity formation and agency in a less risky scenario. So sometimes it's difficult to do identity formation in social, real-world settings. And so can we utilize video games to make those advancements in self-awareness and self-actualization? His research says that it can be incredibly helpful for those that engage in it. Really interesting study, and I would encourage everybody, if you are readers, go check that out. I can send you a link afterwards. But it resonates with me because I think about some of my core identity pieces. And when I think about who I want to be, I oftentimes reflect on some of my favorite video game characters. And I think about kind of what would Cecil do, right? If Cloud was in this situation, if Noctis were in this situation, how did I react when I was playing as them? How can I react in real life? And it's that bridging of integration between the game world and the real world that I think is, it just takes a little bit of an extra step for gamers to make that connection. But I love hearing your story and about how it's really helped you think through things in your own life and reckon with your own identity and reality.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think people should definitely read that. I mean, look, as I said, I'll give an example. Like, what got me back into JRPGs was like, I was going through a very, I wouldn't say a challenging period, but kind of like a bit of like, I was hitting a wall with my life in 2024. And then I kind of came across, like, I started playing Persona. Then I started playing Fire Emblem. Like, I used to love these games as like a youth and adolescent. Then I just lost touch with them from 2010 up until 2024 basically. And then when I got back to it, I was like, okay, like this is my gaming genre, like I need to have something to do. Plus I'd been to Japan in 2023 for the first time, and that changed like my whole perception of everything. Like I became my otaku self again. And then like now it's when I got into political advocacy, like up in Canada with the last election, and then with advocacy with, like, as I said at the beginning, Iran, like I really started using my knowledge of history with that I thought I threw away in a decade ago. It came back, and that's where I kind of be like, okay, like I was in that Dark Knight phase of like living as a nihilist and with nihilist, like living with like some regrets. But then like once you find your purpose with those characters, it's like, okay, you can really change your life. Like everyone talks about Persona 5 Royal, especially like how that game changed them. Yeah. That's one example. But for me, it's Final Fantasy 4. Like I just played the Pixel remaster. Although I have the DS version, I'm trying to collect all versions of FF4.
Okay.
FYI. But like the voice acting one is very good. But everyone has said that one is the hardest one. Like you really need to like be patient with that.
That one is challenging. It takes a lot of grinding. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So is there any other characters? Like, I mean, we're talking about like, we're talking about characters that we could live through. Like what would Noctis do? What would Cloud do? Are there specific characters? Like it can't be one. If there was, maybe I'll make it easy in that way. 3 characters that you try to live through philosophy wise or mindset wise in JRPGs with your day to day, like that help you. Like who would they be and why?
Man, so there's 3 characters top for me. I like to be the positive energy in the room. So Titus is number 1. I really, really love to be him. So these are all going to be Final Fantasy characters, obviously.
That's fine. That's okay. Don't worry.
The second one, I love to think through Noctis as well. I mean, obviously, but his story of being kind of this punk kid that's a victim, moving into a victor, by the end, and leaning on his friends, and that's a really powerful and potent one for me as well. But maybe one that's a little bit more. I always want to say Cloud, but I like the end game Cloud, not the first game Cloud. He's a little bit more moody and broody. So I think that I'm actually going to go with Locke from Final Fantasy VI.
Okay.
The reason that I say him is because he has a charm and a suaveness and savviness to him that I really like. There's a phrase, you mentioned that I'm a Christian. There's a phrase that comes from the New Testament, Christian scriptures, that says, be as subtle as serpents, but as peaceful as doves. And that's kind of how I feel about Locke. He is savvy, charming, and once he's got you, you don't even know like he's got you. And it's like, because he's a thief, right? But there's something about the way that he is a likable rogue. And it's like, I like that. I would have never wanted to associate with a thief before, but he's like, no, it's all in perception. You're a treasure hunter. And I'm like, I love that. And so it's kind of just, I want to be able to subvert people's understandings of all of my professions. Hopefully, I'm not just a professor, but I'm a person that can help them engage a little bit more. I'm not a thief. I'm a treasure hunter. I don't work in church life, or like I'm a Christian. Instead, I'm a person that helps you kind of think about your life differently. Those are the sort of things that I really love, and I channel a little bit of Locke in that, I think.
That's fantastic. For me, if we're going with Final Fantasy only, I would say Cecil, because of like where I've been with my life. I think that's a perfect example there. That's self-explanatory. My second one would be Sabin from Final Fantasy VI, because
I love that. Martial arts,
yeah, because I'm a martial artist, but also too doesn't like being put in a box. Like he does not he does not let others define him based on like what they feel is right for him. Like he said, I don't need this royalty life. I'm going to become a martial artist and travel and figure out and become more of a contrarian thinker in certain aspects. So perception, like you said, Sabin is very like, he's not afraid to like see other viewpoints and learn. And I would say the third one is, because remember, I'm not as well versed in Final Fantasy as you. I've only played number 1, number 2, which I beat on the Game Boy. I played number 4. I played some of number 3 on the DS, but I was very mad because I thought that was Final Fantasy 3 on the Super Nintendo, but then it was like, no. And I was like, I got hoodwinked. And then
yeah, you did.
I was very angry at myself because I got that for my 15th birthday, and I'm like, what is this? And I should have. I told my mom. I was like, at the time, I knew I should have asked for Super Robot Taisen Original Generation 1 and 2 on the Game Boy Advance then. But then I played some of FF10. I rebought it I bought it on the Switch, so I have it now to play when I'm ready. And now I have FF15 to play because I got a deal on it with the game guide, obviously hardcover.
Yeah.
But yeah, my third character, I would say I'd have to go with Edge probably in FF4, because Edge is like very, as you said, it's like a lot of people have expectations of him, but he loves disappointing them, and then he just does his own thing.
He's so good, and he's just cool too. I love Edge.
And I love like the little romance he has like with Rita.
It's like
Rita doesn't like pays no attention to him, only like in certain ways. And it's like so he's kind of like that hopeless romantic too, where it's like he likes that one woman, but she won't reciprocate, or if she does, it's always like in this very way with him. But then apparently, as I said, without giving away spoilers, like some said, once you play the after years, you kind of like see like how they both mature. But the ending of number 4, where you see like Rydia come and Edge just like turns away like in shyness. I love it.
Perfect. I love it.
Those are the ones I live. And if I could say non-Final Fantasy, Pierce from Golden Sun: The Lost Age, quiet leader that just goes that doesn't make it about like himself, and like unless like really needed.
Yeah.
I'd say in Persona, I would say I'd be like I like the protagonist in number 4. Everyone loves number 5 Joker now. I love number 4, man. Number 4 is just... in the back of me here in my bookshelf, I have all the Persona 4 mangas, like, because I loved number 4 that much. And I would say when it comes to Dragon Quest, I really liked the protagonist in number 4 because of like because and no, number 3 actually. I really like the number 1 and number 3 because number 3 is just so iconic. So yeah, those are the non-Final Fantasy ones. But sticking to Final Fantasy, those are my 3: Cecil, Sabin, and Edge. I would have picked Kain, but that's a controversial take because then people backstabbing and betraying all your
Yes.
friends.
He's good though. I mean, he's just cool. So I get it. I get it.
I wanted to ask you this though about Kain because this caught my mind, and my pattern recognition. You played Final Fantasy 2, right? Do you remember the Dragoon Rickard?
I do.
And you remember how at the end he has a son called Kain?
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, it's not related, but their both name is Highwind. So I'm thinking to myself, in an alternative
Mm-hmm.
universe, that's the father of Kain. Because remember when Kain says, my father died. So I always feel there's a connection between FF2 and FF4, unless
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes the games do like to give nods, like in Final Fantasy VII Remake. When you go up into, there's a museum segment of that game, and there's a picture of like the original founders of Shinra, and in that picture, there is a character who is straight from Final Fantasy X-2, whose name is Shinra. Now, that is just an insane Easter egg, but is there a connection? Who knows? It allows fans to kind of dream about it. They won't confirm it one way or another, but it's just a neat little Easter egg.
it is. What was your thoughts on Final Fantasy 2? Because like not the one that
Mhm.
you had on Super Nintendo, because I
The
played
original.
FF2. I kind of like it. I know a lot of people hate it. I just liked it because of Rickard, and at the end game at the
Yeah.
Game Boy Advance and PSP, you could play as the dead characters. And then it's like I love the dialogue when they find the Emperor and well, spoiler alert, I shouldn't say that, but like the final boss in the extra game. And it's like I love like when Rickard says like so coldly, he's like we died, we gave our lives so others would not have to sacrifice their lives and whatnot. It was so cool. Like man, dragoons are just such a cool class. Like
Okay.
be a dragoon, but don't be like Kane Highwind. People be like Kane Highwind and FF for the after years.
Final Fantasy II is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated
Mm-hmm.
in the entire series. Yeah, it gets a lot of crap because of the battle system and the
Mm-hmm.
experience point system. I understand that. That's really frustrating at times. There's ways to cheese it too, but for me, it was the advent of storytelling in
Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy One had a nice overarching story, but you didn't really care about the characters. Two remedies that, and so to me, that's what makes it great.
It's just that, in a way, it's kind of funny how we consider FF4 like the real depth and story creation, but FF2 does have a story where the Emperor of Palmacia is like the Dark Crystal, but you have that mix of Star Wars as well, like a
Hmm.
rebel, a young rebel coming of age, like Furion, and then he gets the party, and then you have like they go fight it. But people, I just feel, as you said, the gaming, like the battle system and experience system, just really left a bitter taste in a lot of fans' mouths, and I think over time, FF2 has aged better than we thought. But there's still like the ones like the JRPG streamers that will they just don't want to touch it again. They're like, nope, this is F tier, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I can't hate on it. I mean, like everyone's opinion is different. Like some love FF6, some hate FF7 because of how like mainstream people push it down people's throats, and some love FF8. Like they're the FF8. Everyone says to me, you have to play FF8. Then some say, no, don't play FF8. You're not gonna like it with the. But I feel people love Squall, and I'm like, man, I can't win here, Professor. Like it's like,
Yeah.
what's your thoughts on that? On this whole like debate with the FF series?
The Final Fantasy fandom has a lot of passion about the things that they love and a lot of passion about the things that they don't love. The series itself has kind of done it to itself
Mm-hmm.
because it's reinvented itself so many times that you've got early adopters, you've got the PlayStation 1 level adopters, then you've got the more recent fans of 13, 15, and 16 fans, which takes on a little bit more of an active role,
Mm-hmm.
especially 15 and 16. I think that it's important for fans to kind of remember like what you like and just understand that we are all on a journey together. And if you don't like something, that's fine, but your least favorite Final Fantasy is somebody else's favorite Final Fantasy. That's
Mm-hmm.
important to remember. For me, I've come to an appreciation of all of the games. I struggle, for example, most with Final Fantasy V. I don't find the story particularly compelling, and even though the job system is really well done, I like what it did for later iterations rather than that game. That game to me is a little too grindy for my enjoyment, but that's okay. I don't fault anybody for liking
No.
it, but people are always very offended when I say that. I will say this may be my hottest take. Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 all three suffer from the PlayStation 1 era. PlayStation 1, in my opinion, 32-bit gaming aged the worst in all of history. The pixels, there's a charm to them. Even Nintendo 64 and GameCube PlayStation 2 era has aged pretty well. Final Fantasy 10 on the original PS2 still holds up in a lot of ways, but those PS1, it's almost like the awkward adolescence, right? It's like my arms are too long, my face has like acne, I don't really know how to be an adult. That's what PlayStation 1 is. And so I was so grateful for the remasters, but then also 7 Remake, and I think that 8 and 9 are also do that because those are great stories. 8 is a phenomenal story that is hindered by some of the technology of the time.
Right. What's your thoughts on, I wanted to ask this because in the time we also had the Final Fantasy killer. Sony tried to bring out their own version to counter Final Fantasy Legend of Dragoon, which is a cult hit, by the way. Oh, that's one character I forgot. I should have added in the non-Final Fantasy. I loved Lavitz. Lavitz is a soldier, very quiet, team player, loves helping others, loves being like the guy that brings people together. And I love his, you know what? I love Lavitz because Lavitz was a bro, especially when his mom, when they bring him to he brings Dart and Shauna to his house. And his mother reminds me of like my like late mom, where she's like, when are you coming home with I hope to see you with a beautiful bride one day. And, don't be like your father, and being a soldier. But she goes like, these are your friends. I'll cook dinner for them. I love that game. I mean, I think even Final Fantasy fans can appreciate that on the 32-bit era, but it's like a call. They have to remake that game. Sony, please remake that game.
I never played that game, but my friend Unileska, who makes a lot of great JRPG content, she adores that game. It's one of her favorites of all time. So people like yourself and others that talk about that game make me want to play it. So if they ever remake it, I will be sure to.
Amazing. What's your last question? What's your thoughts on Sony's latest announcement and the future of gaming? Because it's very divided, but I wouldn't say divided. It's rightfully so. I mean, it makes me not want to buy a PS6, to be honest. I mean, I'm already, I just have a PS4 still, to be honest, still works. But I want to get your thoughts on the latest news and where you feel the future of gaming is going and how would it impact you as like a content creator, but a gamer yourself.
I have two thoughts on this. One's personal and one's more public and stuff. My personal one is the reality is that I buy collector's editions for games that I really care about, but I almost exclusively get everything digitally at this point in my life. For example, my primary console of choice right now is the Switch 2. And so because of the portability of that, I just prefer getting things digitally. I almost lost my physical copy of Breath of the Wild once on a plane, and ever since then, I was just like, I really just kind of want it digitally so that I don't lose my games.
That makes sense.
But for a portable game system, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the other side of things is I think that it's frustrating because I want people to have choices. If they want the physical games, I think they should be able to have that. I do fear for the digital rights of consumers. If a program or a infrastructure is shut down, then that is not great for the gamer, for the consumer, even though it's great for the company. And that's where I think that we need laws and governance needs to catch up with the technology. And that's the struggle of all technological advancements, right? The technology always outpaces the systems and policies. So we're just playing a bit of catch up. We'll get there. I have no doubt about that. But right now we're in that really rough spot where gamers and consumers are being cheated out of things.
Amazing. Well, look, I really want to thank you for coming on, Professor. I'm so glad we got to do this. It took some time, but hey, we finally did it. I hope I was a great host.
No, you did great.
Oh, thank you. Well, it was an honor to have you, and hopefully I can get on some others. So, look, as I said, I love doing politics, and I do feel there's JRPGs relate to politics because it's an arena. You get into the battle with the monsters and a boss. It's an arena. So, as I said, I wanted to ask, where can people connect with you if they want to see your work, whether it's your scholarly work, your streaming work? Please, plug that in.
So you can find me on all the social medias. It's just Prof Noctis. I do a lot of Final Fantasy and JRPG content over on Twitter/X, or I do a lot of Assassin's Creed content recently over on Instagram. But YouTube is where you're going to get video essays from me, as well as what I call lecture plays. These are academic style let's plays. And then most of my live streaming is over on Twitch as well. So for Final Fantasy and JRPG adjacent content, YouTube, and then live streams over on Twitch. But all Prof Noctis.
Prof Noctis. Well, Professor,
let me also say, if anybody is going to the University of Alabama, look me up. So
there you go. Look it up. The University of Alabama. Please look up Professor Noctis. Well, Professor, it was such an honor to have you on. The hour flew by like this because
Thank you.
When you're passionate about something like you are, like it really radiates onto others. And I really hope this conversation, when it's out, like even those who've never heard of JRPGs but they want to get in, I have a positive feeling that this will get people to do something productive. I really want to thank you once again. If you ever want to come on again or do like another interview like with other JRPG streamers to discuss like the impact of JRPGs in today's changing day and age, would love to do it if you're open to it.
Cool. This is a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. And I love what you're doing here, Drew.
Thank you. All right, guys, if you like this conversation, follow the guests. It doesn't happen without them. Thanks to all the supporters, and make sure to hit that like, share, subscribe button to the DrewXperience show. I should have said that at the beginning, but I was too excited for the guest. Takes 2 seconds. It's free. Yeah, there you go. So make sure to hit that like, share, subscribe. It's 2 seconds. It's free and whatnot. So experience out.